Hey there, everybody, and welcome to this presentation on triggers, out with the bad and in with the good. I am your host, Dr. Donnelly Snipes. The first thing we want to talk about is what are triggers? We hear this word a lot, but what exactly are we talking about? And triggers are anything. Yeah, I know that helps a lot. Anything that prompts a reaction. A positive trigger is something that prompts a positive feeling or a positive action out of you. A negative trigger, if you will, is something that triggers an unhelpful response or an unpleasant feeling in you. Something that triggers anxiety or anger or depression is going to be what we're calling a negative trigger, so to speak. It's important in recovery to not only eliminate the unpleasant triggers, and in substance abuse recovery we talk about triggers a whole lot and eliminating people, places, things, reminders, cleaning out the closet, doing all those sorts of things. But it's also important to add triggers that remind you to do the things that are necessary for a rich and meaningful, happy, healthy life. What categories do those fall into? What are we talking about here? Well, physical triggers are things when you feel a certain way physically. If I get up and I am achy and in pain, that could be a trigger for a bad mood. So what are some things that I can do to help myself feel better? There are not a whole lot of things, but I can remind myself to go to the gym. I know that seems counterintuitive when you're achy, but sometimes just getting those joints moving can help things feel a little bit better. Physical triggers, if I haven't had a good night's sleep, then I'm probably going to be noticing more negative stuff and be more negative. So it's important to get good quality sleep. And in order to do that, what do I need to do to remind myself to trigger my sleep? Now, a lot of the triggers we're going to talk about are environmental, so we'll get there in a minute. But it's important to remember that physical states, pain, exhaustion, well, those are the big ones, may trigger you to feel or react in a certain way. Hunger, that's the other one. Pain, exhaustion, or hunger. Being aware of your blood sugar levels is really important to helping you feel calm and clear-headed, and your hydration as well can help you feel more focused and more energetic. So sleep, hydration, nutrition, and addressing physical pain issues are all going to be really important. And you can do some of those, figure out what do you need to do to remember to drink water? What do you need to do to remember to minimize stimulants? What do you need to do to remember to stretch so you don't wake up in the middle of the night in pain, for example? For me, I have a stretching mat that I have right by my bed, so I can lay that out and stretch at night before I go to bed. Whatever it is that triggers you, reminds you to do the things that you need to do to be happy and healthy. Affective triggers, and these are things that are going to trigger your mood. What can you do in order to help yourself feel happier? Is it, can you think about things that are going to help you feel happier? Can you add things in the environment that are going to make you feel happier? What is it that makes you happier? Likewise, what is it that makes you unhappy, and how can you minimize those things? And they may be thoughts, they may be things in your environment, they may be things you see, they may be social media, they may be news media. Whatever it is, think about what triggers your unhappiness and try to minimize that, and what triggers your happiness and maximize that. Add that in so you're surrounded by reminders of happiness on a regular basis throughout the day. And that includes in your car if you drive, or in your briefcase or whatever if you happen to ride the subway or the metro or the L or whatever they call it where you are. Cognitive triggers are things that we think that make us either happy or angry or anxious or whatever. What sort of cognitive triggers, what sort of thoughts do you have that trigger unpleasant moods? And a lot of times we call these unhelpful thoughts or cognitive distortions. Personalization, all or nothing thinking, jumping to conclusions without having all the facts, mind reading. There's a lot of cognitive distortions out there, and on our YouTube channel, AllCEUs Education, there are a bunch of videos on addressing negative thinking styles as well as addressing cognitive distortions, so you can look for further videos on those there. But I want you to also think about adding in cognitive triggers, adding in thoughts every day that make you happy. Have, like your own little fortune cookies around, or set on your mobile device to have push notifications come through that provide you with a positive message once an hour. Things that are going to trigger happy thoughts, thoughts of strength, thoughts of empowerment, thoughts of courage, thoughts of determination, thoughts of compassion. All of those thoughts, anything that triggers those thoughts, are going to help trigger a happier, more energized mood and physiological state of being. Now, environmental is the big one. Triggers we typically think of as environmental: sights, sounds, and smells. Basically, you can do taste and touch in there, but those are a little bit harder. Sights: what things in your environment, look around right now, what things in your environment make you feel drab, make you feel depressed, make you feel overwhelmed, make you feel angry, anxious, any of those unpleasant emotions, and what can you do to eliminate those? If you're in an environment, one place I used to work, the walls were all sort of this pea puke blue-green color that just felt very cold and institutional to me. It drove me crazy. Interestingly, the first house we moved into in that particular city also had the same color walls, and that was the first thing I did when we moved into that house, was change the color of the walls to a butter yellow. I love butter yellow. I love butter too, but that was important for my mood because it changed the mood, it changed the aura, if you will, of all of the rooms when it was a brighter, warmer color. You may not realize how much influence colors have. If you can't paint your walls because you live in an apartment or something, one thing you can do is get rolls of art paper or actual what's the word I'm looking for, wallpaper, rolls of wallpaper, and instead of pasting them to the wall so it's permanent, you can use little finishing nails or thumbtacks to put them up on the wall, so you have an accent wall somewhere that has things that make you happy, or a color that makes you happy. If it were me, I would probably have wallpaper that had different critters on it and different flowers and stuff. But the cool thing, if you don't stick it to the wall, if you just use little finishing nails, you can periodically switch it out with other things that make you happy. So there are a lot of different things that you can do in your environment to address the sights that you see. If it's somewhere that you can't do anything on the walls, or you may not be able to put up pictures, maybe at the office they don't want you to personalize it, which is unfortunate, but sometimes that's the way it is. Okay, what can you put on your mobile device? Can you create a photo album on your mobile device? Can you, on your computer, create a screensaver that goes through some of your favorite pictures that make you happy? You want to be able to have somewhere that you can go when you need to take a mental break. Other sights that might bother you besides color can be disorganization. It can be when you're driving to work. There can be things that make you unhappy or stress you out. If you need to alter your route to work so you're not driving past something that triggers you negatively, then you may need to do that and take a few extra minutes. For some people, for example, traffic is a huge stress trigger for them. It's going to be important for them to arrange their schedule so they're not driving in the heaviest traffic in the middle of rush hour. Sounds can also be positive or negative triggers, and I talked about this a little bit in the last video. I love the sounds of birds, especially black-capped chickadees and eastern towhees. Obviously, you're not just going to get those. Oh, and cardinals. I love the little chipping they make. And I love it especially if it's associated with actual birds that are at my actual bird feeder. That isn't always possible. When I'm at the office, that's not something that I have. That's something I have at home. At the office, though, I can listen to background noise that has bird songs on it or different sounds. And a lot of times you can just go on YouTube and find soundtracks that are like 8 hours long that are woodland sounds or nature sounds or whatever you're looking for. It's probably on YouTube for free. You don't need to go out and buy some expensive noise machine or sound machine. Other sounds you might like include music. When I am trying to concentrate, I don't like sitting in complete silence. That's just me. So I will put on instrumental music like Vivaldi, which I happen to like. You need to figure out what you like to hear, what makes you happy to hear, and put that on. Likewise, you need to know the things that make you stressed out. Loud, sudden noises, dogs barking, maybe thunderstorms stress you out. Any sounds that cause you stress or anxiety, you need to figure out ways to eliminate those as much as possible. If lots of background noise, maybe you work in one of those offices that everybody is in the same bullpen and there's just constant noise and talking and it's just overwhelming, you may need to invest in some noise canceling headphones or some earplugs that you can put in so you can get a little bit of silence and get regrounded and not feel bombarded constantly. And finally, smells are our strongest memory trigger. I'll say that again. Smells are our strongest memory trigger. So if you smell something, maybe you smell something. I remember I had one teacher when I was in grade school. It was my drafting teacher. Smelled of stale cigarettes and coffee and had the worst breath you have ever experienced in your life. And he was always coming over behind us. This was when we had the old-fashioned drafting boards, and leaning over our shoulders to help us with our drafting. And I remember every time he would come near, just kind of gritting my teeth going, oh, please, I hope he doesn't look at my paper. Not because I had a problem with my paper, I just didn't want to smell his breath. So periodically, if I smell stale cigarettes and coffee, I'll get a whiff of something that smells just like that, and I'm like, ugh. And it brings me right back there. He was a nice enough man, but it brings me right back there remembering that particular experience. But I can also go to one of the stores, one of the big box stores or whatever, and start smelling some of the wax tarts. Those aren't essential oils, those are just smells. And some of them I smell, and I remember a time that I smelled that in the past that made me very happy. And getting those particular wax tarts I focus on in order to create an environment that reminds me of happy times, which causes my brain to dump those happy chemicals and those relaxing chemicals like GABA. Smells don't have to be essential oils. Now, there's a lot of research out there that essential oils can be very beneficial to triggering positive feelings, but they can also get expensive. I would say until you figure out if smells work for you, which they probably will, you just have to find the right ones, stick with things that stick with things like cinnamon or chocolate or coffee or whatever it is that makes you happy. Find something that smells of that and try to figure out how to incorporate it in your environment. Smells are super easy to incorporate. You can put them on little cotton balls. If they're the wax tarts, you don't have to do anything. You can take the little wax tart and put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in your purse if you're a female, or your backpack or whatever it is, and whenever you need a whiff of it, you can just open that bag. You can take those wax tarts, you can also put them in your dresser drawers in order to have that smell permeate your clothes a little bit. If you use particular oils, you can get them online to create fabric softeners that you can use if you're down with that. That's a lot of work doing that. You can take the wax tarts and you can keep them, please keep them in a jar or something so they don't melt when it gets hot, but you can keep them in your car. You don't have to go out and buy a bunch of different expensive, clip-on things for the car and this and that. Smells permeate quite a bit. They have little rings that you can put on top of candles and put an essential oil or a smelly oil. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for today, but you can put it on the ring, and as the bulb heats up the ring, it makes the aroma spread throughout the room. There are a lot of options that you have. And finally, relational or interpersonal triggers. The bad ones are people that trigger stress, anxiety, depression, frustration, resentment, guilt, grief. There's a lot of unpleasant feelings that can be associated with relationships. However, there's also good triggers, and you want to think of those. Think about times that you've been in relationships that have made you feel loved and accepted and warm, and people that you've admired and people who've admired you. Those are all the positive triggers. And keep pictures of those people or those events in your sight, in your memory, so you can remember that there are people there supporting you. And for the people who are more difficult to deal with for some reason, figuring out ways to accept that. If they have to be in your life, maybe their family, recognizing that they are probably doing the best they can with the tools they have at that point in time, having compassion and empathy for how unpleasant it must be in their head for them to be that unpleasant to everybody else. Try to understand that that's just the way they are. They are going to be critical. That's the way they were raised. Maybe their parents were critical and their parents were critical, so that's what they do. They don't mean harm by it. They think they're helping, but it may not be so helpful. Recognizing not only what they say or what feelings they trigger, but why. And most of the time people are not acting out of malice. They are acting from their own place of dysfunction or experience, and it's up to us to be able to set boundaries and either communicate with them assertively that is not helpful. It would be more helpful if you would do XYZ. Always present a solution, or figure out ways that we can accept people as they are, even if they are a little bit cantankerous. I hope that helped give you some ideas for things that you can do in your environment that you can start doing right now, today, on your way home from work, wherever you're at. Stop by somewhere that has those little wax tarts. Obviously, those are one of my favorite little things. And find something that you can smell that makes you think, that smells really good. I'm relaxed. And that can help you move one step toward feeling a little bit happier. Thank you for watching.